Welcome to another show of Celebrate Life. Today's show is actually part 2 of our interview with Anne Lezak. Welcome back, Anne.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks for having me.
Where we left off at the last session was you had just moved to Vermont and you were beginning to talk about where you had
That's
moved.
right. And I had told my husband that if I didn't find work I liked and people I liked, we were going to move in 2 years. And he knew that would be back to my hometown of Portland, Oregon.
Right.
So I had 2 names when I moved because, as I said, I worked for the National Institute of Mental Health.
That's right.
One of those names was a really lucky one, Commissioner of Mental Health, Rob Copeland. Was that his title?
Well, he was the director of the Division of Mental Health at that
Division
point.
of Mental
Yes,
Health
I
director.
remember.
And the other one was there was a new National Resource Center on Homelessness and Mental Illness that had just been funded, the first one of its kind, in Albany. So those were the 2 names I found.
Oh, interesting.
They both turned out into long-term career opportunities for me. It was unbelievable. And I was saying that's where you come into the story, Gary. Because, I mean, this is so many years ago. 36 maybe?
Yeah.
And, 37. And Rod Copeland kindly met with me, graciously met with me, and he said, well, I don't have a job, but our children's director is interested in a grant. Do you do grant writing? And I said yes. That was a little white lie, as you later found out. I had done a lot of grant reviewing, which I think is the best education ever for grant writing. I also really love to write, and I had also written a bunch of requests for proposals. I had been, on the federal side, so I totally knew what went into them, so I felt like I could do this, but grant writing was new to me. And you hired me on the spot because I don't think you had anyone else.
It's true.
You had to. So I wrote my first grant, which I still remember, was for respite care for parents of children with
mental health.
severe mental health issues.
Yep.
And it was the first one of those in the country, and were we thrilled when we got that grant.
Right.
So from then on, you guys rolled out the red carpet for me, and I wrote several grants for you folks. Meanwhile, I was hired by the National Resource Center for Homelessness and Mental Illness. Again, not hired, but on contract. I wrote so many and edited so many reports. They were exploring all aspects. I mean, the criminal justice system in homelessness and mental illness, systems of care, children, families. It was an amazing, amazing opportunity. And I worked with some very bright, wonderful people who they were data experts, and I got to go and visit places. I'll never forget, for example, going to the homeless encampment in Phoenix, Arizona in the summer.
Wow.
And these people were living in tents, and it was like 105 degrees. It was horrible.
Wow.
And I will never forget, I for some reason, the people were gone, and they had us peek into a tent. And there on a pillow was a little pink teddy bear, a little child. It was, that was seared into my brain.
Right.
Anyway, it was amazing. So I just took my NIMH career, and who knew that I would be able to use it so well. So I think I was the first virtual worker. My first grant, I remember, I had to drive down. I found that the nearest fax machine was because I was living in Minden, Vermont, remember?
Right.
And then in the middle of nowhere. And the nearest fax machine was at the florist. And I had to pay something like 5 cents a page to fax my grant in. Anyway, it was amazing. So from there, I was very lucky. I built a great career. And Gary, I have to say, and I've told you this many times, you really brought me along. And, in addition to grant writing, you had me start doing grant training at the federal level because you ended up, moving to a federal job in children's mental health in a big way in the Center for Mental Health Services. And you really became a mentor for me. And you would, I would say, I can't do this. And you'd say, yes, you can. Of course you can. And my first grant writing workshops were at the federal level, and they were wonderful. And I had been teaching grant writing and I love teaching grant writing. I must have taught by now, I don't know, 100 different workshops.
Yeah.
And in addition to doing it kind of on my own, I've done it through universities. I've done it, so many different organizations, whether it be libraries, the Vermont Arts Council, the organization that you used to work for.
In SAMHSA,
Yeah.
Center for Mental Health Services.
Yeah, and also here in Vermont. Anyway, it's been a wonderful part of my life, and I just was able to, from Rutland, build a really pretty great career working with tremendous people who I almost never saw, just like people do now. And I worked for years for the National Resource Center on Homelessness and Mental Illness, and through the work that you helped me find.
So you didn't go back to Portland?
So I never, I went back every year, and I still love it, but I didn't go back to Portland. And so I did that for years. And then I just realized that I wanted like a real job. I became very connected to Rutland and the regional area. Yeah. I was on boards, and my kids were really involved in sports, and I did all kinds of volunteer work at the school. I ran the spelling bee and the school newspaper. I had kids, so I was very involved. But I just felt like I wanted to make my work in my community at one point. So after all those years of all this, grant writing and report writing and flying, I did a lot of federal meeting proceedings and that sort of thing. I had joined the board of the Boys and Girls Club of Rutland County, and within two months of my joining, the director quit. And I just I talked to Harry, looked myself in the mirror, I probably called you, and I just said, you know what, this might be meant to be. So I took that. I was hired. I was lucky to be hired. I took that job. I loved that job. It was incredible. It was also an amazing amount of work because we had almost no staff. Right. They had been funded through a grant that was over, and now for the first time they needed to raise money. So I went and met with each board member, and most of them, I said, we're going to become a fundraising board. I knew that most of them were not interested, so I had to totally rebuild the board. Wow. Because they all said, oh no, thank you. So it was incredible, but there was such a need in Rutland. Those kids, it just really was it made me feel like I was really like following my passion, and it was great.
Tapped on all those skills that you used in different ways, and from being very young, with loving to work with people. Writing skills, people skills.
Oh, I also wrote grants. I had to write grants for sure. Oh my gosh. But I really loved it. It was really hard, and what's very sad, during that time, I actually had an amazing experience. I went to India with my sister, and she brought home her adoptive daughter, and we had already planned, like our family, a trip to Paris. My parents were over in France visiting. They used to go for long trips, and they invited us to come, and so even they were amazing and wonderful trips, but just being gone for like those 2 weeks got me behind. I would go to, I would wake up like at 6:30 in the morning on Saturday and Sunday, sneak down to work. I mean, it was too much. Wow. By that time, also, my mother-in-law had moved in with us. So my Chinese mother-in-law, I didn't touch on this, no. My father-in-law died, and she immediately put her house for sale in Queens. And Harry, about 3 weeks later, said, we called her Popo. Popo's going to come up to Vermont. And I said, oh, that's great. She really needs a break while she decides what to do. Harry said, no, you don't understand. I'm the only son. She's coming to live with us.
Wow.
So within like 3 weeks, we had to kick my daughter out of her bedroom, create a new bathroom, turn my office, like have my office, make my office half the size so my daughter could be. Anyway, it was really wild. So we had, 3 really active kids, 2 of them teenagers, or maybe 1. A dog, a cat, and my mother-in-law, and this very intense new job. And I have to give Harry credit. He said, I'm doing the laundry from now on. So first we had pink underwear we all had pink underwear for a while until he figured out
colors.
Yeah, he and Adrian too. But he took over the laundry, which was really great. And but it was too much. And I know you shouldn't blame the victim, but I got a really bad cancer within a year. In just about a year. I got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Wow.
And I was ignoring the symptoms. I was exhausted, but I was always exhausted.
Yep.
My feet swelled up, which I didn't realize. Wow. I had these red markings, which Harry thought was something else, and I was doing anyway. We went away for Thanksgiving, and I was so sick. I remember making the pumpkin pies that I always promised to make, and I just could barely make it through. And so I went to the doctor right afterwards, and they took an x-ray, and I had pneumonia. And then they found out soon enough that I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a pretty bad cancer.
Yeah.
About half the people who get it don't survive.
Right.
So there I was with, 3. So what did I do? I quit my job.
Of course.
I loved my job, but I quit my job. I said, if I only have a year ahead, I have to spend it with my family. And besides, I realized that the pace I was trying to keep up was just
too much,
unsustainable.
Way too much.
So my kids were all involved in all these activities, and we were able to sort of, we kept that up. So I did chemo, 6 rounds of chemo, and then radiation. And I think the worst part of it actually was being bald. It was so hard. No offense, Gary. You look great.
You didn't call me for that advice.
No, I didn't call you for that. I knew I was going to go bald, and so I had Harry shave my head, which was really, even thinking about it now, it's very, very hard. And something about seeing your, seeing my bald head in the mirror, it just said cancer, cancer, cancer. So I wore a hat and scarves all the time. I wasn't, a wig seemed weird to me. I don't know. I wasn't a wig person. Yeah. But clearly, I looked, it was obvious that I had cancer. And I was very, very fortunate that things went really well. And it was a hard, as you can imagine, it was a stressful time for my family. And my mother-in-law, fortunately, my mother-in-law was lovely and wonderful, but she knew how to cook tea and rice. That's it. Because she was raised in a wealthy family where the kids weren't allowed in the kitchen ever. In fact, when she went away to medical school, I think I might have already said this, a cook went with her.
No, I didn't know that.
She came from very great wealth.
Wow.
And, she was kind of her family was one of the reasons that the revolution happened. Yeah. So she had brothers who ended up in prison and work camps and all sorts of things. So she was very lucky to be in the States when the revolution happened. But she would hover around the kitchen and she would say, "Oh, I want to learn to cook." So she was so sweet, but it was so frustrating because she would look at me and she'd say, she never learned the difference between sugar, baking soda, flour. So she would always say, "Annie, how much powder you put in?" And I would have to tell her. And finally, after 2 weeks with us, I had to make her lunch. She couldn't cook anything. I had to make her lunch every day. Right. I remember I was working. I had these 3 kids. I was volunteering. No, this was before I was sick. Okay. She moved in with us. And I finally, it took a week. I taught her to make sandwiches. She was so proud. Who knew that it would take a week? But it was so foreign to her. And she was so proud of herself that she would make sandwiches. Wow. And then she wouldn't learn to make an egg. She just couldn't. And I came down one day and she had made an egg in the microwave.
Oh my!
She boiled an egg in the microwave, and she was so proud. And from then on, that's what she did. But anyway, it was she really was great. But it was just like another person. It was really a lot.
Yeah.
So so fortunately, she went to visit relatives every winter in Minnesota. She went just about the time I was diagnosed right before Christmas. And I had my first chemo like on December 24th.
Wow.
And I remember the doctor said, "Do you want to wait till after Christmas?" I said, "No, why would I?
Right.
I want to get this started. And by the way, I'm Jewish, so let's do it."
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, but I mean, we did celebrate. We celebrated both Christmas and Hanukkah. But anyway, she was gone. She came back 6 weeks later, and I was already like starting to get a little better. Mm-hmm. And I didn't let her know when I was feeling bad or whatever. She later said, "Annie, did you really have cancer?" She thought that maybe it really wasn't cancer because my healing process was really pretty good and it wasn't that dramatic for the family. When I didn't feel well, I just went up to my room, which happens. I mean, when you have chemo, you're not going to feel well. There's going to be days when you're really sick. There's just no way around that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
did having Harry in the house, being a physician himself, help with all this?
He was much more there as a father and a husband. Mm-hmm. Much more. Yeah. He really didn't take that. Yeah. I went to Dr. Google for all my bad information. That he said, why are you learning? Like, why do you keep doing this? Yeah. No, he really was focused on my healing and
good for him.
Yeah. So that was what he wanted to do. So anyway, I got better. Obviously, here I am.
Yeah.
And I decided that I'd better not go back to the Boys and Girls Club. Mm-hmm. I got back on the board and I became very involved with them again. Mm-hmm. And I was on the board until I left Rutland, like for the next 5 or 6 years. But so I was very involved. I really loved the Boys and Girls Club, but I just realized I shouldn't do that. So I went back to my itinerant work of being a contractor and teacher. And
did having gone through that, what's impact on your life did that have?
So, it's interesting. I really, read all these books about people who have cancer, and after that, they become calm and they focus on beauty and just are really like different, changed people, and they slow down. I did it for about 2 months. I just can't. It's just not me.
Right.
And I remember saying to myself, what did I learn from cancer? I'm back in the same, I don't know, I just, being high energy and doing a lot of things somehow. I think the one thing it did do is it kind of helped remind me how important my family is to me. And I'll tell you what else it did, which was amazing. I didn't even say this. The most amazing part of having a serious cancer is that you experience your friends in ways that most people don't see until they're dead. I mean, people were amazing. They wrote me beautiful letters. They brought me gifts. They brought me all kinds of, everyone wants, the cures that people suggested were pretty wacky, but, all I could say was thank you. I'm an atheist, and a friend had a prayer circle, and I just said, thank you. What else am I going to say? But it was amazing how my friends came through for me, especially that I realized that the life I had built in Rutland was just incredible. I also had friends from Portland who came, but it was incredible. My sister was great. So anyway, it was really something. Thanks. So I went back to the contract work, and then I ended up. I proposed doing grant writing. There was a new Marlborough College graduate school, and I can't remember what the degree was called, but it was basically, it was a really great word for nonprofit management. It sounded fancier than that. Mm-hmm. And I approached them and said, I could teach grant writing. Well, they had just received a grant for a new program. It was a federal grant to help nonprofits around the state better measure outcomes and kind of manage their work to, to be more, not efficient, but productive and impactful.
Sure.
For nonprofits, it's very, very hard, and I've learned this in grant writing, to help people, like if you're having a reading program for a year with 4-year-olds, how do you measure is it really going to be great?
Yep.
So that was very exciting to me. And I was hired for that program. It was really wonderful. And we ended up picking 9 nonprofits from around the state, and they all had to be small nonprofits. They had to be under $1 million. I forget if that was our decision.
Yeah.
And we worked with them. I was with that program for about 2 years. It was amazing. And we worked with them on, kind of managing to outcomes. And we brought in, I should have memorized the name of it. It's a fabulous book. It's results-based accountability, and the author of that is amazing. And it just changed the way that, it helped me change the way that I think about helping nonprofits understand how you build a strategic plan and how you work towards outcomes that really matter.
Right.
So it was fantastic experience. And at the same time, I was hired for, I taught a course in grant writing for the grad school, and I taught a course in outcomes. It was amazing.
That's amazing.
So that's when I got busy, I got just as, I dove into that.
Yep.
And I found myself really, really busy, and I would go down, it was partly online and partly in person, so I would drive down all the way to Brattleboro, and anyway.
Fantastic.
So yeah, it was a really great experience, and yeah, I feel very lucky I had it. And there were frustrations. It was hard, but it was, and it just gave me such insight into different nonprofits around the state. So that was really great. And then I guess it was about then that Harry got a new job. I'd already talked about how he had been in the legislature for...
I don't think you did.
Oh, I hadn't even talked about that.
No.
Oh, so another really big thing that happened to me in Vermont, and this was... Oh, yeah, I hadn't talked about this, because this was while I had cancer. A couple of really bad things happened in Vermont politics. One was the Take Back Vermont movement, which is kind of like the Tea Party really took over. And the other was the incredible controversy over civil unions, which really turned neighbor against neighbor. And there were so many ugly things that happened, and a lot of discrimination. And every Vermont, Rutland County at that point had been about half Democrats and half Republicans. And with those two, at that next election, every single Democrat was knocked out.
Wow.
And they knew they would be if they supported civil unions. They knew, they took the higher road.
Yeah.
So we had it was no Democratic representation in all of Rutland County.
Wow.
We had a terrible, mean-spirited representative who, he actually was a really nice guy. He was an electrician, and he was a party animal, but as far as politics, he was terrible, and he had a big Take Back Vermont sign, and he was very anti-gay. And Harry and I looked at each other when I was getting better from cancer, and we said, you know what? We talked about it, we said, if I survive, one of us has to run for state rep.
Wow.
And of course, I survived.
Yep.
And I looked at Harry and I said, you know what? I'm too liberal for Rutland County. You're a doctor. People know you. They respect you. You have to run. And he did.
Wow.
And I became his campaign manager.
Wow.
And that opened up an entire new life for me
Yep.
that continues to this day.
Yep.
It was amazing. I loved it. And we were supposed to lose. I mean, we were really supposed to lose. The Republicans were like laughing at us. Like in his district, it was like not, 4-term incumbent. 2 Democrats had run and lost very badly to him before. So we just realized we had to do everything. And it was an amazing experience. There was a wonderful, at the Vermont Democratic Party, there was a wonderful House campaign director. But because we were supposed to lose, they weren't allowed to give us any money. And I mean, we were just like out on our own. They said, good luck.
Right.
Thanks for running.
Kind of like at the national level for a very red state, they're not going to pour a lot of money.
We were completely, we were the opposite of targeted. And yet I talked up this young guy, Matt Levin, and I talked him into helping me, and he helped me off the record a lot, and he's brilliant. And I really owe my political life to him. He knows it. We're still really good friends. And he really helped me. And we created the most incredible active campaign. We ended up having 83 volunteers, which is amazing. Wow. And we had it was 4 different towns. We had people in each town. We had sign captains. We had absentee vote captains. Wow. We had circles of people who would identify and write letters to their, and you've been involved in politics, you know, it's a lot of work. Yeah. And it was a lot of work. And I was still working and had my 3 kids. But anyway, it was amazing, and Harry won.
Yeah, and what did you love about it, though? You said you really loved it.
I loved building this sense of purpose with people. We were kind of behind the 8 ball, you know, we weren't supposed to win, and just finding people and I learned that, you know, you have 5 or 6 volunteer jobs. So when you call someone up and say they want to volunteer, or when someone asks to volunteer, you never say, oh, you know, I'm not sure, you know, if you don't want to do phone calls, forget it. Yeah. You have 5 other things that they can do. And so bringing all these people together for this purpose and giving them hope in this downtime when we had lost every single state rep. Right. Just, you know, it was so exciting. Maybe I wouldn't be saying this if he'd lost. Maybe I would have just said, oh, that was awful. But it was really exciting. And the fact that so many people, all my neighbors, many of them who I didn't even know if they were Democrats, I don't know to this day if they're Democrats. Because they knew us, they wanted to help. And there were just so many different jobs. I mean, we had our kids and their friends. Well, my son wasn't into this, but my girls and their friends, they were teenagers, and they would go sign wave, and they would call people for, you know, I could get them to write letters for pizza. I mean, it was amazing. So everybody we knew was part of our crew. And then we met these new people in the town where we didn't know anybody, Bridgewater. Unbelievable. And it was unbelievable. It was really exciting. Harry loved being in the legislature. It opened up a whole new world for him. At the same time, he kept his job. He had just become director of the emergency department in Rutland Regional Medical Center. It was really a busy time. He would drive back and forth almost every night. He hardly stayed overnight. And, you know, our kids were really, I mean, it was a really busy, wild time. But it was very exciting, and I think it really awakened in my kids are all very politically active, all 3 of them. That's great. And I think that really helped. My son also during that time, or right before then, became a page to the legislature, which is an amazing experience if you have an opportunity to do that. I think he loved that. It was really great.
And his dad was in the legislature?
No, actually that was before. Now I'm realizing that was before Harry was in the legislature. So Harry ran and won 3 times. Each time he wasn't supposed to win because we were a very Republican district. And each time a fairly strong person ran against him. The first time, I think, honestly, the reason we won was because the incumbent was so sure he was going to win that he got lazy and didn't really, I mean, we operated an incredible campaign. But then I knew how to do it. So from then on, I got very involved in Rutland County politics. And eventually, we had like $12 in the bank, and we're meeting in some back room of a disbarred lawyer when I first got involved. It was unbelievable. And so we had to start from scratch. But that same love for, you know, getting people together and we can do this. And in Rutland County, it felt very different because we knew we were the underdogs. It was almost like a secret society that we were building. We brought wonderful, wonderful people together who are still among my dearest, closest friends. Wow. And we built that party. Wow. And I was on the executive committee, then I was the vice chair, and then I was the chair until we moved to Burlington.
Of the county?
Of the county Democrats, yeah. Okay. And I just, and our goal was to turn Rutland from red to purple. We knew we were never going to make it blue. But we had some great wins. We had some tragic it was really tough. We had some tough losses. But we ended up having meetings where the county meeting, 50 people would come and we'd have food and we'd have fun. We marched in the we had the Rutland Halloween parade is incredible. We had amazing, turnout there.
Yep.
We had Mia Farrow come for a fundraiser attended by like 100 people because Patrick Farrow happened to live, his brother happened to be an artist.
In Rutland?
Yeah, in the Rutland area. We had Peter Welch come for amazing parties. We had a beautiful headquarters. We found this guy who loved to decorate. It became a big part of my life.
Yeah.
So even though I was still working a lot, by then my kids were in high school, so I wasn't volunteering at the grade school. So I took all that energy. Wow. Then Harry, he had another job, but anyway, he got asked to become the Commissioner of Health by Peter Shumlin when he came in. Yep. And that meant a move. By then, my kids, all but one, were in college.
Okay.
And so that in fact, I think Laurel had just entered college too. Mm-hmm. So we decided, okay, I actually was really sad to move. I can't believe how I got so attached to that
community.
Rutland County that I was so down on moving there. Wow. And it still feels like home to me. It really does. Every time I drive down Route 7. So anyway, but we said, okay, if we're moving to the big city, we're going to move right in the city. And I drew a circle 1 mile out and I said, we want to be able to, we could never walk anywhere or ride our bikes.
Right.
I said, we're going to be able to walk and ride our bikes everywhere. And that's what we did. So we got a little house. We really downsized. We got a little house in the South End because at the same time, Harry had for years wanted a house on a lake. And for years I had said, no, because I knew like the moving back and forth and the packing up. No, and my kids were, they already lived in the woods. What the heck? So now it was time. So we bought this wonderful, wonderful little 3-season house on Lake Dunmore. It's just beautiful. It's all windows. It's very simple. But so we bought 2 houses at once. Yeah. And it also took a long time for our house to sell. So we really downsized. We bought a little house in the South End. Wow. And have been walking and riding our bikes ever since. Yep. It's really, that was, I really do love that. And it's only 5 blocks from the lake. Yeah. Burlington, as you know, is really a wonderful city.
Beautiful city.
And so even as much as I missed my Rutland crowd, I did have friends here. You're one of them, and I had a couple of others who I immediately reconnected with. And biking and walking has been, I really made it my city, and that has been fabulous. That's been really great. Yeah. Plus, all the summers we spend a lot of our time down at Lake Dunmore. Yeah. And my kids have loved Lake Dunmore. Oh. Especially my daughter, who's very social, Alyssa. I can't tell you the number of times she said, Mom, are you going to be using the lake house next weekend? I was thinking of having 3, 4, 5, or 6 friends. So yeah, she often does. So that's been a really wonderful kind of getaway for us. And I just feel like things slow down there. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I always do is I pick wildflowers, and so I go out on my walk and I pick, and they change, throughout the seasons. Yeah. So it's really been a great thing for us.
And you handle transitions beautifully. You've gone through a lot of them in your life. Why do you think that? Where does that come from?
I'm not so sure I handle them beautifully.
Well, it sounds like it.
But you should have seen us cleaning out that Minden house. Oh my gosh, it was hard. Where does that come from? I don't know, because I had such a stable childhood. I grew up, in the same house. I can't say what that is, but something about me, something about the new and the more exciting. I guess the grass is always greener on the other side. I guess I must have that sense. So even though I don't want to give it up, I guess I always feel like there's something more. And I must have kind of this inner sense of confidence that I'm going to make this work. But I also feel like a lot of it has been luck. I just feel like it has been luck. So, yeah. So anyway, we moved here. And after, I was still doing my contract work. And once again, I felt like after a while, I really want to be part of this community. I had volunteered at Mercy Connections, which is a really amazing, wonderful organization that serves a lot of people at risk, whether they're coming out of jail, struggling with anxiety or mental health problems, just finding their way back in the world after maybe a tough divorce, or just having moved to Vermont and dealing with the fact that it's so expensive and they don't have much money. There's also an amazing program for mostly women, but I think they take men now too, that an entrepreneurship that has started so many amazing businesses. So and also one of the things that's become really strong is serving the immigrant and new American population. So they had a tutoring program, and my daughter had volunteered. She was at UVM, my youngest daughter, Laurel, and she said, Mom, I wanted to volunteer someplace. I was on a board, but I wanted to volunteer someplace. And she said, Mom, Mercy Connections. So I did, and I loved it. I loved the tutoring program. It was really great. And sure enough, about 2 years later, it was so funny because I remember I had decided that I really wanted to have a job, to find a job. And I wrote down, it took, first of all, it was kind of fuzzy, and then I actually wrote down, these are my criteria. Ideally, I want to be able to walk or bike to work. I want to be able to be working with people, but also have it be like more of a management job. I'm not the direct service person, but I want it to be a small enough organization that I'm still involved. I want to work for a great boss. I decided I didn't want to be an executive director because I just knew the pressure I'd put on myself at Boys and Girls Club. So I said I want to be like one down from the executive director. I wrote those things down, and I was woken the next morning, or no, I guess I wasn't woken, but maybe I was in the shower and a call came in or something. Anyway, the person who had the job that I ended up taking, she had had back surgery, and she decided that she couldn't come back. She wasn't getting better. So all of a sudden, this job, which was called, it was the director of all the education and all the education related programs. And anyway, it was there's 3 areas in Mercy Connections, and it was the director of one of those 3 areas that all of a sudden was open the morning after I'd written that.
Wow, and it fit those criteria.
And it fit every one of the criteria. Dolly Fleming, who was the director, is just an amazing, amazing person, and became yet another mentor in my life. So I applied for that job, and I was very fortunate, and I got that job, and I loved that job. How much more time do we have?
Got about 10 minutes more.
Okay, I got to run to Uganda now. I got to get into Uganda. Right. So I loved that job. It was really great, and it did meet all my criteria. It was fantastic. We started new programs. I was part of grant writing. I also, because it's a small enough organization, if there were some problems with people, they came to me. So I got to know all the people. There's this wonderful Thursday lunch that all the staff, all the participants go to. It was just an amazing program. And it's still a wonderful organization. I'm actually on the board now, which I'm very happy to be on the board. So that went really well. And then Harry and I had talked years and years and years ago about living overseas. And it didn't work out mainly because his mother came to live with us. And, well, anyway, different reasons. And he said, that dream of living overseas, because by now, he had served for 6.5 years in the Shumlin administration as commissioner. And guess what? There was a new governor, a Republican, and Harry quit that day. He would have been fired anyway, probably. But anyway, so he left. So he was looking for what to do. And we decided to join a program called Peace Corps Response, which is a 1-year Peace Corps program for people who have a lot of professional experience. And so they match you with an organization. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a fish out of water in Peace Corps, wherever they sent us. the people won't like me. I'll be the ugly American. Plus, I'm a really picky eater. I won't eat the hot food. Well, anyway, Harry talked me down from the ledge, and we decided to do it. And we ended up in Uganda.
Wow.
And that was 2017, 2018. Mm. And that was an amazing, life-changing experience. I have been back 7 times, I think.
Wow.
And we are going back... you didn't even know this, but we've just decided we're going back again for another 7 weeks of volunteering in February and March of this year.
Nice.
So Harry helped start the first emergency medicine residency in Uganda, and that has just gone great. And,
wow.
and we've hosted his residents here, and anyway, we've become very, very tight. And I was attached to the one of the largest and oldest palliative care providers in Africa. Yeah. And my job was fundraising and grant writing and strategic planning, you know, a lot of the things that I do. And I found out that I became the writer for everything. Like if someone wanted to borrow the van for the organization's van for a wedding, they'd come, Annie, can you help me write this letter? If someone was working on, I helped someone write the bylaws for her church's women's finance little group that they had. And I actually went to the church and worked with them there. I helped, I did teach grant writing at the university, which was really amazing. And yeah, I mean, whatever it was.
How did you deal with the language difference?
English.
Oh.
English is, I mean, who knew? I knew as much about Uganda as you do. But yeah, the main language is English. But everybody speaks their tribal language, and everybody speaks the language of their area. And in our area, it was Runyon Kori, which, believe me, I only learned like just, you know, the basic greetings. And all the old people don't speak English. So Harry had to have translators at the hospital. And I was not very good at Runyon Kori. But people mostly spoke English. But one of our drivers, he was so great. He tried so hard to get me to learn. He would take me aside and he'd say, Annie? And he'd say good morning in Runyon Kori, and I was supposed to say good morning back, and then I was supposed to say, how are you? Oh my gosh, it was incredible. I made incredible connections there. And I'm actually, like right now, I'm on 2 committees, and every time I talk to just to hear their lilt, and I get homesick for Hospice Africa Uganda. It's really become an incredible new chapter in my life, which I did not expect, because I was already in my 60s when I first, you know, our first visit to Africa was for a year in Uganda. So I have to get to one last thing, which is when I came back, we don't have time for this. I spent a lot of time in Portland, Oregon. My mother was very ill, and she died, and about 2 weeks after that, I was back packing up her house, and I got a call asking if I would consider running for chair of the Vermont Democratic Party. Right. And again, timing was amazing, because I could not have done that when I was going back and forth. I went back and forth 10 times from Portland, Oregon during COVID. I mean, I traveled with my mother. I spent most of my time there. She had died. She was very active politically. She would have been so proud, and my dad would have been. So I thought about it for a while, and I said, okay, yes. And that was the last, you know, more recent chapter of my life. I was the chair of the Vermont Democratic Party, which was an amazing experience. And again, you know, just these people who would come, I mean, just asking people to help, and they would just come. I'd say, I need your help. What can I do? It was just bringing people together. Yeah, it was really a wonderful experience. And then Harry really, really wanted to go back to Vermont, or to Uganda for 6 months. So I had promised him when COVID ended we could do that. So I actually left being chair of the party after we had a really wonderful, successful election. And I'm still very involved in the party. But yeah,
well, Anne,
I guess that's it.
Wow, what an amazing life.
I've been very fortunate.
Yeah. when you think, I mean, it's hard to even put it all in one package. You've lived so many amazing chapters as time's gone on. What would you tell someone who is young in their life and about how to go out and live your life?
You know, I thought about this, and I realized that my father, he was the person I would call for advice when I was really, really stuck, but he died 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I really miss that still. My father said to me once, and I just think it really rings true, that he said, I've been a very, very lucky person. But luck is, I hope I didn't say this already, but luck is, it's two things. It's serendipity, it's being in the right place at the right time, but it's also about putting yourself out there, being willing to take risk, being willing to say, you know what, I don't know how this is going to work out, but it appeals to me, I'm going to try it. And making those connections and letting people know that you're, willing to try something. And that's how my father lived his life, and actually my mother too. And I think that is like the best advice ever.
Just take the risk.
Be out there. Put your and be a person who others realize is willing to work very hard, to kind of tackle some new problems.
So when someone says, that sounds great, but geez, I don't know. I don't want to fail, or I'm scared of doing that.
Well, as you and I both know, failure is part of life. Exactly. I mean, that's the other thing, and I hate failing. Yeah. I mean, I always said that one of the reasons that I made sure Harry ran instead of me is I would be the worst loser if I had lost that race. I'd be so mad. So I mean, failure is hard. It's really hard, but in my life, relying on other people has softened my failures and has allowed me to not fail when I would have. Yeah. I can't tell you the times when I was, working with the Vermont Democratic Party, some issue would come up or someone would be really mad about something. Yeah. And I would just pick up the phone and call one of the previous chairs or somebody who I just could rely on and say, I'm kind of stuck here. What what do you suggest? So having building that, I guess that's the other piece is, and my father did that too, is build that group of people. Yes. Have them know that they can rely on you, and in turn you will rely on them. People want to help. Yeah. They actually want you to call and ask for help, and I think most Americans don't understand that. I think that's actually
a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Any last words?
That's it.
Thank you so much for your time, Anne. This has been a great 2-session interview.
Yeah, well, Gary, I just love that you do these. It's been something. So thanks.
All right, you're welcome.
All right.
Bye.